What if I told you that one random purchase for $10 could completely change the course of your life? Not because of luck, not because of talent, but because you finally saw an opportunity that everyone else ignored.
The alarm clock cuts through the 5:47 a.m. silence like a serrated blade. You flinch, eyes snapping open before the sound even fully registers. The air in the room is stale, still holding the heat of a short, restless night. You roll out of bed, your movements stiff and rehearsed. There is no time to linger. You brush your teeth with quick, jagged strokes, staring into the mirror at a face that looks like it has already worked a full shift. In the kitchen, you grab a slice of dry toast. You shove it into your mouth, the crumbs sticking to your lips as you swallow hard to force it down. You check the time again. Every second counts. You grab your keys, the metal biting into your palm, and step out into the hallway. The apartment building is quiet, but the street outside is already waking up. You hit the pavement, your boots striking the concrete with a rhythm that feels like a countdown. The morning chill bites at your skin, but you do not stop to adjust. You walk toward the stop. Head down, already bracing for the weight of the day that has only just begun. The bus arrives with a screech of rusted brakes. You climb the steps and find a seat near the window, the metal frame vibrating against your back. Around you, the bus is a cage of tired commuters. Nobody speaks. Everyone stares at their own lap, lost in the same gray rhythm. You lean your head against the cold glass, watching the city blur past in streaks of concrete and exhaust. Your eyes catch your reflection. You see the hollow fatigue, and then the mental machine kicks in. Rent, gas, the phone bill. The numbers dance in your head, constantly shifting, never landing on a total that makes sense. You subtract the rent, add the gas, and watch the remaining balance shrink to nothing before you even reach your destination. It is a loop that never breaks. You press your forehead harder against the window, seeking a distraction, but the math follows you. Every bump in the road reminds you of the debt. Every red light is an hour of your life vanishing into the ether. You are moving forward, yet standing still in the exact same spot, trapped in a metal box that is taking you nowhere. The automatic doors slide open, exhaling a blast of refrigerated, chemically treated air. You step into the aisles. The scent hits you first, sharp, stinging bleach, masking the underlying smell of stale air and packed cardboard. You pull the polyester fabric over your shoulders, the material rough against your skin. You take your position at the register. The belt begins to move. A plastic bottle hits the scanner. Beep. A box of detergent follows. Beep. A bag of frozen peas. Beep. The fluorescent lights overhead hum with a persistent, low-frequency drone that vibrates in the back of your skull. You stop looking at the items. You stop looking at the people. You only see the flow of goods. Each beep is a pulse, a marker of another second of your life being harvested. The store is a vacuum, pulling the energy from your limbs until you are just an extension of the machine. The hum grows louder, filling your ears, drowning out the world outside. You reach for the next item, your hand moving with the same robotic precision as the last 1,000 times, and wait for the sound. Beep. Another minute gone. Beep. Another. You are a ghost trapped in the flicker of the lights. The shift ends. You walk out into the cooling evening air, the persistent hum of the store still echoing in your ears. You head toward the bus stop, your feet heavy on the cracked sidewalk. A movement near the corner pulls your gaze. You stop. In front of a luxury car dealership, a man stands under the glow of a street lamp. It is Sergio. He is shaking hands with a client, a leather-bound folder tucked under his arm. He laughs, a sharp, easy sound that cuts through the street noise. You watch the client nod, pull out a pen, and sign the paper. One gesture, one signature. You stare at the scene, calculating the math in your head. That single commission check is more than your entire month of scanning groceries. It is 30 days of bleach, flickering lights, and robotic movement, condensed into 1 minute of his afternoon. The resentment rises in your chest, cold and hard. You look down at your own hands, still ghost-stamped with the rhythm of the scanner. You are standing in the same city, breathing the same air, yet you are living in a different universe. The bus pulls up, its brakes hissing, but you do not move. You keep your eyes locked on the dealership, watching the power dynamic play out in real time. Back in your room, the silence is absolute. You sit on the edge of your mattress, the darkness pressing in from the corners. Your phone glows, casting a pale, sickly light across your face. You open the Marketplace app. The interface is a chaotic grid of people selling their forgotten lives. You scroll. Your thumb moves in a rhythmic, mindless flick, over and over, past furniture, rusted tools, and broken toys. Your eyes ache. The blue light murmurs. Then, you stop. A smartphone appears on the screen. It is listed for $80. The photo shows it lying on a scarred wooden table, covered in a thin gray layer of dust. You remember the market price for this model. It is triple the listing. You tap the image, zoom in, and study the edges. It looks functional, it looks like an opportunity. Your pulse quickens, a sharp, unfamiliar rhythm against the stillness of the room. You know that $80 is your grocery budget for the week. You know that if this fails, you lose. You stare at the screen, your finger hovering over the buy button. You weigh the cost of staying exactly where you are against the risk of the unknown. You press down. The transaction completes. You set the phone down and wait for the world to change. The package arrives 2 days later. You tear the cardboard open. The device is dull, the charging port choked with compacted lint, the screen webbed in greasy smudges. It looks like a relic of someone else's neglect. You do not see trash. You see potential. You clear your desk, clearing a space for the work ahead. You find a thin needle and begin to pick at the port, grain by grain, until the metal shines clean. You dampen a microfiber cloth, applying pressure in slow, deliberate circles across the glass. The layer of dust lifts, revealing a surface that catches the light once more. You spend 2 hours in the quiet, watching the transformation take hold. You move to the wall, taping a clean white sheet to create a seamless backdrop. You position the device, angling it to catch the afternoon sun. You shift the light, testing shadows, until the screen looks pristine, vibrant, and valuable. You look through the camera lens and snap the frame. It is not just a phone anymore, it is a product. You stare at the image, a flicker of genuine hope rising in your chest as the gap between what it was and what it could be narrows to nothing. You list the phone for $160. You set the phone down and stare at the screen. You wait. The minutes drag, each tick of the wall clock sounding like a hammer blow against the silence. You pace the small room, your hands restless, counting the potential profit in your head. Then, the phone vibrates. A sharp, bright chirp. A notification pings. Where can we meet? Your heart jumps. You type out the address of the coffee shop 3 blocks away. You arrive early, sitting by the window with your back to the wall, the phone hidden in your palm. A stranger enters, scans the room, and approaches. You stand. You hand over the device. He inspects the screen, nods, and peels 3 crisp bills from a leather wallet. He places them on the table. You slide your hand over the cash, feeling the texture of the paper against your skin. You walk out of the shop, the bills heavy and real in your pocket. You reach the street, and for the first time in years, the city does not look like a cage. You have no manager, you have no uniform. You have only the weight of your own success, and the sudden, intoxicating realization that you are the one in control. You walk through your front door, the cash still warm in your pocket. You look around your room, but the space no longer feels like a sanctuary. It looks like an inventory list. You spot the sneakers under your bed, their soles worn but clean. You grab them. You move to the shelf, pulling down a dusty console, its cables tangled in a knot. You reach for the box of unused chargers in the corner, gathering every scrap of tech you have ignored for months. Your room is a graveyard of things you once used, but now, you see only the resale value. You clear the desk completely. You bring out the white sheets again. You set up the first pair of shoes, angling the light to hide the scuffs, emphasizing the brand. You snap the photo. You check the marketplace app, typing in the model, gauging the demand. You list it. Then, you pick up the console. You wipe the dust from the casing with a dry cloth, frame it, and hit post. You move with a frantic, focused energy, clearing the shelves, the floor, and the drawers. By the time the moon climbs high, your room is stripped bare. The walls are empty, the floor is clear. Your desk is covered only in items ready to become profit. You refresh the banking application on your screen. The numbers blink in the dim light. $340. It is not a fortune, but it is proof. You look at the bare walls and the empty shelves that used to hold your life. They do not feel hollow, they feel like a clean slate. This is not luck. Luck is a coin flip. This was a calculated extraction of value from forgotten corners. A shift occurs in the way you process the world. You look at a discarded chair on the street and no longer see junk. You see the cost of wood, the potential for a restoration, and the final resale price. You walk past a stack of outdated electronics in a neighbor's bin and your mind instantly calculates the parts, the demand, and the margin. The world has transformed from a collection of objects into a sprawling, interconnected grid of profit opportunities. You are no longer just a person living in a city. You are a prospector. You start seeing the hidden markups in every transaction you conduct. You see the gaps between what things cost and what they are worth. The grocery store, the uniform, the beep of the scanner, they are fading into the background of a life you have already outgrown. Your gaze is steady, sharp, and entirely focused on the next move. The alarm clock does not exist anymore. You wake before the sun, driven by a new kind of hunger. Saturdays are no longer for rest, they are your peak operating hours. You drive to the edge of the city where the flea market grounds are still shrouded in the gray, damp light of pre-dawn. You step out of your car, the air sharp and cold against your face. You weave through the rows of folding tables and tarps while the vendors are still unloading their trucks. You walk with a predator's focus. You do not look at the people, you look at the piles. You scan the rusted tools, the stacks of paper, the boxes of tangled wires. Your hands hover over objects, testing the weight, gauging the material, calculating the potential for recovery. You touch a wooden frame, feel the grain, and instantly know the market price for a restoration. You pass a crate of forgotten electronics, your eyes locking onto a specific brand, your mind already running the numbers on its resale demand. You are not browsing. You are auditing the inventory of the world. Every item is a puzzle piece waiting to be flipped. You move deeper into the rows, the sound of your own heartbeat steady and rhythmic, searching for the one box that justifies the entire morning. You find it beneath a pile of moth-eaten blankets, a cardboard box overflowing with sunglasses. The vendor watches you with a bored expression, naming a price that is too high. You do not flinch. You point to a loose hinge and a scratch on the rim, your voice calm and precise. You offer $15. The vendor scoffs, but you hold your ground, counting the bills into your palm, refusing to look away. He sighs and shoves the box toward you. The deal is done. Back at your table, you work with surgical intensity. You wipe away years of dust, tighten every screw, and buff the lenses until they catch the light with a sharp, clean clarity. You list them, waiting. 4 hours later, the notification pings. A buyer meets you, hands over the cash, and walks away with the frames. You count the money, $122. The profit margin is staggering. You stare at the bills, realizing the grocery store scanner is a ghost of a life you have buried. You are no longer punching a clock for someone else. You are the architect of your own exchange, and this is only the beginning. You walk through the front door, your arms laden with cardboard boxes. You do not head to the kitchen. You go straight to your room. You stack the boxes in the corner, building a wall of inventory that climbs toward the ceiling. The floor disappears under layers of electronics, bubble wrap, and shipping supplies. You spend your evenings sorting, labeling, and documenting every item. The house begins to echo with the sound of tape dispensers and the rustle of packing paper. One evening, the door creaks open. Your mother stands in the threshold, looking at the mountain of supplies and the bare walls where your personal belongings used to be. She points to a stack of shipping labels. When did you start this? What is all of this? The question hangs in the air, weighted with years of expectation. You stop your work, set the inventory list down, and look her in the eye. You do not apologize for the mess. You do not explain yourself as a hobbyist. You say, "This is my business." The words feel heavy, solid, and final. You watch her expression shift from confusion to realization. You turn back to the boxes, your pulse steady, the pride of a new identity rooting itself deep into the floorboards. The fluorescent lights hummed with the familiar, grating intensity. But for the first time, the sound failed to trigger any anxiety. You stood at the register, scanning items with a mechanical rhythm. Beep. A bag of rice. Beep. A carton of milk. You watched the customer reach for their wallet, their eyes fixed on the total. You looked past them, toward the sliding glass doors that led to the parking lot. The store manager walked by, his gaze scanning the aisles for mistakes, but he did not look at you. You finished the transaction, placed the receipt in the customer's hand, and felt nothing. No dread. No obligation. You walked into the back office, the air thick with the smell of bleach and stale floor wax. You reached into your locker, pulled out the green fabric, and laid it across the metal bench. It looked smaller than you remembered, a hollow shell of a person you had already outgrown. You placed your name tag on top of the stack. You did not look back as you exited the office. You pushed through the heavy doors and stepped into the open air. The silence of the street was absolute. You took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the last few years dissolve with every step away from the building. The bedroom was too small for the ambition. You moved the entire operation to a climate-controlled storage unit, a concrete cube that echoed with the sound of your own footsteps. The roll-up door clattered open, revealing the first of your international shipments. These were not individual items found at flea markets. These were crates stacked 6 feet high, sealed with industrial bands and labeled in languages you did not speak. You gripped a box cutter, the blade sliding through heavy-duty tape with a sharp tearing sound. Inside, the inventory was dense, wrapped in layers of protective foam. You pulled out a prototype, testing the weight against your palm. The financial risk was no longer measured in dollars, but in thousands. If the market shifted, you were trapped under the weight of this stock. You spent the night sitting on a plastic chair in the center of the unit, the fluorescent tubes overhead flickering. You checked the app, refreshed the global prices, and recalculated your margins until the numbers blurred. The silence of the unit was different now. It was not the silence of poverty, but the heavy, expectant silence of high-stakes capital. You did not sleep. You watched the inventory, anticipating the next move in a game that was growing faster than you could control. The storage unit was efficient, but it had a ceiling. You wanted something that could hold more than just boxes. You drove to the edge of the city, pulling up to a foreclosure that looked like it had been forgotten by time. The front door groaned on rusted hinges as you pushed it open. A wall of stagnant, damp air hit you, the smell of trapped mildew and rotting wood. You walked into the living room, your boots crunching on layers of debris and shattered glass. The wallpaper hung in long, sodden strips, revealing water-damaged plaster beneath. Most people would have turned back at the threshold, seeing only a liability. You walked to the center of the room and stomped your boot hard against the floorboards. They held. You looked up at the ceiling, tracing the path of a leak that had long since dried. Others saw a ruin, a place where money went to disappear. You looked past the decay, mentally stripping away the rot to see the bones of the structure. You ran your hand along a support beam, checking for structural integrity. It was solid. You pulled out a notepad and began sketching the floor plan, the layout rearranging itself in your mind. This was not just a house, it was the next scale of the game. The renovation began with a sledgehammer and a promise of speed, but reality arrived on the third day. You tore down a wall to open the kitchen, only to find the main plumbing line was a rusted ruin. Water sprayed across the subfloor, soaking the new drywall before it was even screwed in. You spent the afternoon on the phone, arguing with a contractor who demanded more money for the unexpected pipe replacement. The costs spiked. Then, the electrical crew went silent, leaving the wires hanging like dead nerves from the ceiling. You drove to the site every morning at 6, carrying coffee and a ledger that bled red. Every hour of delay was a drain on your remaining capital. You stood in the hallway, watching dust motes dance in the light, calculating the interest mounting on your loans. You were fighting for every inch of progress, refusing to let the project rot from the inside. When the tile crew missed their window, you did not wait. You grabbed the trowel yourself, scraping away the old mortar until your knuckles bled. The house was a hungry machine, demanding more time and more cash than you had ever planned. You were down to your last reserves, staring at a half-finished living room, waiting for a breakthrough that felt further away with every passing, silent hour. The silence in the house was no longer heavy with rot. It was waiting. You stood by the kitchen island, hands pressed flat against the polished granite, listening to the front door click shut. A young couple stepped into the foyer. They walked slowly, their feet echoing on the new hardwood. You watched them move from the living room to the kitchen, tracing the clean lines of the renovation with their eyes. The man stopped, running a finger along the edge of the counter, then looked at the woman. Her face was tight, guarded, until she caught the light streaming through the new skylight. Her eyes widened. She turned to you, then back to the space, her shoulders finally dropping as the vision took hold. The air in the room seemed to shift. The tension that had been a permanent knot in your chest for months began to unravel. They moved closer, circling the kitchen island, their pace changing from cautious to deliberate. They stopped beside the small table where the documents lay. The man reached out, his hand hovering for a second before he picked up the pen. He looked at the woman, she nodded, and he signed. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper was the loudest thing you had ever heard. The pen clattered onto the table, a sharp, final sound that signaled the end of the renovation war. They left, their voices fading into the street, leaving you alone in the quiet, empty house. You walked to the center of the living room, the space that had nearly broken you, and pulled your phone from your pocket. It felt cold against your skin. You tapped the banking app, your thumb hovering over the login button. The screen loaded, a spinning circle that seemed to last for hours. Then, the balance updated. The numbers flickered, settled, and held. $64,000. You looked at the screen, then at the freshly painted walls, then back at the numbers. The sum was more than a number. It was a physical weight, a total validation of every sleepless night and every hour spent scanning groceries years ago. The memory of the store, the smell of bleach, and the sound of the register beep felt like a different life. You locked the front door, the key turning with a satisfying, heavy click. You walked to your car, the engine humming to life, and for the first time, you didn't check the dashboard for gas or calculate the cost of the commute. You just drove. The city moved past your windows in a blur of glass and steel. You navigated the downtown grid, the car responding to your touch with precision. You pulled up to the intersection at the heart of the district, the signal blinking a steady, impatient red. You checked the side mirror, then looked out the window. Sergio stood on the corner, one hand wrapped around a paper coffee cup. He was watching the traffic, his head turning as your car rolled to a stop beside the curb. He looked at you. His eyes narrowed, scanning the car, the interior, and then landing on your face. It was a sharp, calculating look, the exact expression you once wore on the bus years ago when you stared at him through the dealership window. The power dynamic had inverted, yet the recognition was instantaneous. He stood frozen, the cup halfway to his lips, as he processed the sight of you behind the wheel. The street noise faded into the background. You held his gaze, watching the confusion and the slow, dawning realization cross his features. He did not look away. He stood there, forced to acknowledge the distance you had traveled. While the light above the intersection hung suspended in a deep burning red, the light flickered, then snapped to green. You did not look away until the very last second. watching the flicker of hesitation in his posture as he realized the shift was absolute. You pressed the gas. The engine surged, a deep, powerful vibration that traveled from the pedal through the soles of your feet. As the car pulled into the intersection, the sound of the acceleration rose, filling the cabin and drowning out the phantom noise that had haunted your mind for years. The rhythmic beep of the grocery scanner, that relentless cadence of your former life, finally dissolved into the steady, smooth hum of the road ahead. The city began to blur. No longer a cage of numbers or a map of obstacles, but a wide-open horizon. You checked your mirrors, but you didn't look back at the sidewalk. You didn't look back at the bus stops, the grocery store, or the long dusty hours of the inventory hunt. Those things belonged to a version of yourself that no longer existed. You steered into the flow of traffic, the weight of the steering wheel firm in your palms, and drove toward the future, finally moving at a speed that was entirely your own.